a very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Executive Director of the Prison Fellowship Barbados, Mr. Neil Dowden. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I want us to begin by examining the history of Prison Fellowship Barbados because it is a branch of a much larger organization. It's the largest Christian non-profit organization in the world for prisoners, former prisoners, and their families.
That's correct. We are a chartered member of Prison Fellowship International. Prison Fellowship International is the body that you're talking about that is the largest charity in the world that deals with prisoners as well as their children. Because we seem to always remember the inmates but forget the children. So we deal with inmates and their children as well as their family that's left outside because that's very important. Prison Fellowship has been around Barbados for more than 40 years. We started out as a ministry that used to go into the prison showing films and having service. It was founded by the late Thomas Watts. He's deceased now a year, and he was the main founder member of this ministry. Mr. Watts retired at the age of 90, having worked in this ministry and built it up. And upon his retirement, I took over the role as executive director. As I said, Prison Fellowship in Barbados is known for a lot of the work that we do, as you know, Lisa. The Angel Tree program is our most important one where we deal with inmates, children, at Christmas.
And let's look at some of your programs, starting with the Angel Tree program.
Right. The Angel Tree program was started by the founder of this Prison Fellowship International. He was an inmate, Chuck Colson. And his daughter realized that at Christmas, because her dad was in prison, she didn't get any presents, she didn't get anything, and it was hard for her. So she recognized that there would be other children of inmates that would suffer the same situation she did. So she started the Angel Tree program, which is a program that caters for the children of inmates, where we go to corporate Barbados with an angel that would say to you, boy, 10 years old, or girl, 8 years old. It will also have a unique number, which we would match that to the name of the child. We don't give out the name of the child, obviously, for data protection purposes. But someone then will then purchase a gift and put that angel on the gift. We would then take that gift and give it to the child of the inmate. A few years ago, when we first started, we used to go around from parish to parish taking these gifts. And I remember on one of such trip, Brother Watts, the late Brother Watts, and myself went to a house, and the lady had 6 children. And we were all excited that we were bringing gifts to these 6 children. And the lady said, I thank you very much for the gifts, but can I show you something? And she took us into her kitchen, and her cupboard was completely empty. So even though the children would have had gifts, they did not have food.
Anything to eat.
Suffice it to say, the generous person that Brother Watts was, he made sure that she had food for Christmas. And then the next year, the Angel Tree program took on a different angle, where we started to give gifts as well as a food hamper to these children. So it is now grown, and last year we handed out over 500 plus gifts to children of inmates. We also did, because of COVID, we stopped doing the food hampers, and we had to do like certificates from Popular Supermarket, which would say the person is entitled to $100 in food stuff, but they cannot purchase cigarettes or alcohol, because we didn't want the parents to use it as a means of purchasing cigarettes or alcohol for themselves. So it's used for food for the children. And we've been doing that since COVID. And every year the number increases. And we also, prior to COVID, we started to have what we call a party in the prison, where we would take some of the children who the inmates would have behaved during the year, and they got the privilege to have their children come into the prison, and they would give the gifts to their children themselves. Of course, we put up a tent, we'd have a Christmas meal, we'd have Santa Claus, and the last year before COVID came, we changed everything up and we put in bouncy castles and things that children love. So the fathers and mothers spent the time playing with the children and then just having the meal and giving them the gifts. And as you would know, when it was time to go, there was no dry eyes in the house. But it is a means of keeping a connection between the children and their father while they're in prison. Because one of the things that we would have found over the years is that if a man goes to prison and he comes out, he's kind of estranged from his children because they've got no communication. The children can't visit. So because of that, we try to use this as a means of bridging that gap so that they would have some kind of relationship with their father.
We're a few weeks away from the Yuletide season. Are you looking at having that Christmas party again?
I have spoken to the superintendent, and he has given me the assurance that he's going to work with us to get it done. So I'm hoping to have that party this year, the first one after COVID.
And that is a massive undertaking, of course.
It is a very massive undertaking, and we are trusting God because we are a Christian organization. Because after COVID, we found that a lot of corporate donations have become very low or limited. So one of the things that we are appealing for is for corporate Barbados, like, to take angels so that we can have some gifts. Because we're looking at our numbers and the indication is that we're going to have over 600 children. So we need support from corporate Barbados to take some of these angels and buy gifts.
And I know we'll come back to the donation aspect a little later, but you also have a back-to-school uniform program as well.
Yeah, the back-to-school uniform program, again, has been going for more than 20 years now. And it has changed drastically because when we started, we used to just give like a backpack, some books, etc. But quickly we realized that the children are the ones that, especially inmates' children. I've always said that when a guy goes to prison, it's not him alone that is punished. His family loses a breadwinner, etc. And he cannot provide as he would for his family. Therefore, August is one of the hardest times because parents have to find school books, school uniforms, petty fees, etc. So currently now, at the end of September, we gave out over 600 plus vouchers. And we give these vouchers to parents for $100. They go to either ABEDS or they go to UFO and they get uniforms. We also support in paying like petty fees or buying shoes. We help with books, etc. Because some families got 5 and 6 children. So as I said, we've been doing that for the past more than 20 years. It started under Brother Watts and is becoming bigger. And the more people hear, the more people ask questions. And as you would appreciate, as I said, with COVID, a lot more people got laid off, a lot more people are dependent. And so they're dependent on us to help as well. And I must say, and we've got some corporate donors that every year, I know he doesn't want to be named, but every year he supports us by helping to raise funds among his colleagues to help us with our back-to-school program. Because the cost of our back-to-school program is over $60,000.
And how many children do you support through that program?
It's $600 at $100, over 600, but it's 60,000 there or there, but it's over And we also support some families with the petty fees, as I say, the petty fees and the books.
You also have a summer camp program as well.
Yeah, but that goes in line with the back to school
Back to school.
drive, because again, school meals is a big help to children while during the term. In a single parent home, to find food for children 5-7 days a week for nearly over 8 weeks leaves a strain on parents. So what we've done, we have a summer camp, a free summer camp for the children of inmates. This year, it's been over the last 3 years. This year it's grown that we had to have it at St. Giles. We all grew our own facilities, so we had to use St. Giles School. And this allowed us to have more than 75 children. We were also privileged to have a volunteer group from Jamaica, churches in Jamaica, to come to Barbados and help us run the summer camp as volunteers. And as I said, we provided meals, etc. for the children. We had tours, and the children basically had somewhere where they were guaranteed of breakfast and a meal when they come to the summer camp.
And outside of that summer camp and providing meals, you provide a soup kit. You have a soup kitchen here that you run 3 days a week, and you also have a breakfast program as well. But that breakfast program is not just for the children of inmates. That is actually for the children in Carrington Village and surrounding areas.
Yes, we have a breakfast club for children that go to school at St. Giles and
George Lamb.
George Lamb Primary School. And to date, we cater for about 4 to 5 children. So volunteers would get here at 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 5:30, prepare the breakfast, and the children start coming by 6:30 to get their breakfast. We do this because having collaborated with the parents, we realized that a lot of children go to school without breakfast and breakfast is the main meal.
Yes.
This is, as you said, we have a soup kitchen. So basically we support a lot of families. And because of this, we know that children will be going to school without food. So we have done that to help the children as well. So we provide cooked breakfast for them. We try to make it as healthy as possible with the help. And we, again, is done by volunteers and our internal fundraising.
Are you a soup kitchen?
Soup Kitchen started over 3 years ago. We provide one meal every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We support organizations like, since COVID, we support organizations like Barnard, because they got some members that have gone into hard times. So we provide a set of meals every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they will distribute it among their members who are struggling. We also provide meals for families in the area. And they're not all children of inmates, but they're families. And we are a brother's keeper. And sometimes if we focus on inmates, sometimes giving a man food stops him from committing a crime and becoming an inmate. So that's our soup kitchen, because years ago, you remember, Lisa, people used to just commit crimes just to get back because there were 3 meals a day
Yes.
in the prisons. So we try to wipe out that area by providing meals so they can come. And we don't only provide meals, but we have shower facilities where they can have a shower. We provide towels and soap, etc. There's also clothes where we get about 6 barrels every month from England. A church in England supports us with used clothes and food stuff like pasta, things to help in our soup kitchen. So we provide clothes for those that are living rough, food stuff, etc. And they would come, they can have a shower, and they can have a change of clothes, and then feel like a normal human being. Because sometimes the things that we take for granted, like a shower or something, some people don't have a shower for days because they don't have nowhere to live. So those are the things that we try to help in areas with our soup kitchen.
How many people do you feed on those 3
we
days?
prepare about 174 meals.
174 meals. 3 days. On each of those 3 days.
Yes.
That's a lot of people.
And we've got dedicated volunteers because I need to state this, none of our volunteers are paid. It's all a labor of love from the top right down to the bottom. So we have dedicated volunteers that come in and cook, clean the meat, etc., and prepare the food. Also, we also have, I must mention that we get support from the University of the West Indies Give Back program because we want a charity that can give back. And over the years, and even during our summer camp, etc., we had students from the university who would come in and give back. They would help with the help me with the administrative part, like writing letters, soliciting funds, etc. Like, so we also get a lot of help from the university Give Back program.
And I know that you mentioned university. You're also focused on educating inmates at Dodds Prison. Tell me about the education program.
Prior to COVID, we had 2 courses being run at Dodds Prison. We had one graduation where inmates literally graduated with the graduation gowns and everything. And you had comments from parents like, it's the first time they're seeing their son in a different light, not in court, but with a graduation gown, going across the stage and collecting a certificate. In terms, seeing their sons or their daughters in a positive light. And unfortunately, COVID cut that short. But we are in talks with the education department of the prison to renew our courses. And again, all our courses are sponsored by Prison Fellowship International. They send in all the books and everything at no cost to us or the prisons. So the courses are all free. While we were in education, before COVID, we had also just started our education program for the children of inmates. So we would have classes, right? We had computer classes. We were going to have classes like swimming classes and other things. Because one of the things that we are primarily focused on is letting the children know that because my father made a mistake or my mother made a mistake, it doesn't mean that my life is over. And it doesn't mean that I have to walk that same road that my parents walked. So we're trying to show them with supporting them with school books and all these things to show them that there's another way. We've had talks with organizations in the USA, and one of them was promised to sponsor 3 of our young people next year to go over to the United States and be part of a church facilitated camp and facility, just to show the inmates children that there's a different way.
And going back to the inmates, what kind of courses were you conducting?
Well, our courses were mainly, we didn't get to do the ones we were doing were like behavioral changes. Some of them, they were biblically based, but at the same time, showing the children, the inmates, that there's consequences to the actions, and it was well received because it wasn't, they participated, we had a lot of group discussion. As a matter of fact, I would say this, that we had one of the first in the prison. One of the inmates was released on the day of the graduation, and he was given permission by the prison to come back in and graduate, even though he was released. And it says a lot to show, that because he wanted his day in his graduation gown and, how his pictures, just to feel good. And part of change is about making you feel good about yourself. And that's one of the things that we need to change in our country.
How many inmates do you actually work with? Because I know everybody wouldn't be able to.
I know, we don't, well, we get our referrals directly from the prison. The reintegration department would call us and say, well, prisoner X is coming out, we need some help. We would then help them make sure that we monitor the ones that try to get welfare. We've got a link with the Ministry of People Empowerment, and we've created areas where we could forward their forms, etc., and monitor it until they get welfare help, like in housing and clothing. We've also got links with the homeless shelter. So if they come out and they don't have somewhere to stay, we could reach out to Mr. Safri and get them fast tracked in there. Because you don't want them to come out of prison and be on the streets and then they think, well, what's the point?
Mr. Dowden, how is Prison Fellowship Barbados managing with donations? I know the last 3 years have been extremely challenging for most charities.
Our programs are, I always say, it's only by the grace of God that we meet what we do. And God has been good to us. And corporate Barbados, as well as the government, has been good to us. But we still fall short in many areas. And we're trying to find ways and means to help ourselves as well. For instance, I forgot to mention that with the inmates, if you look outside, you'll see we have a container where we've got a lot of tools, etc., like lawnmowers, weed whackers, drive mowers, and all these tools, which we then help inmates when they come out and they have got a job to debush some area. They could come and collect borrow the tools, do the job, and then come back, bring it back. We've got power washers and things like that, because we're still trying to, instead of just being the people that would become beggars all the time, we want to teach them how to fish and become self-sufficient. So the same thing we're trying to do with our prison fellowship. We're looking at ways and means. We've had suggestions like GoFundMe pages. We exploring areas where people can pledge, like, I'll support Prison Fellowship for a year and I'll give you $10 a month, $20 a month. We're trying to put those things in action because we recognize that there's a small pot in corporate Barbados and there's a lot of charities all fishing at that same pool. So we're trying in our own way to explore areas where we can look to get grants and different things to make ourselves more, because what we don't want is to stop the programs that we have or to stop our soup kitchen or things that we do that are helping people.
I know you mentioned that you're falling short in some areas in terms of donations. Ideally, if you could give me a dollar figure, what would it cost to run Prison Fellowship Barbados at its optimum?
At its optimum, I would say probably close to about $200,000 a year.
Okay.
Because of all the programs that we do, right through the year is important.
All right, Mr. Dolan, still a lot more to discuss. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
As Barbadians prepare for the Atlantic hurricane season, here is some information about shelters. Shelters are listed in 2 categories. A Category 1 shelter may be used during a hurricane or other hazard event, while Category 2 shelters may be used if they are still in a reasonable condition after a hazard event or disaster. Persons are advised to make their way to shelters well in advance of a storm's arrival.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with the Executive Director of Prison Fellowship Barbados, Mr. Neil Dowden. Mr. Dowden, now anytime someone is sent to prison, there is an effect on households. Let's look at the effect. Dissect it as best as you can in terms of the effect of incarceration on families.
Definitely. A mother or a father is taken away from the family. And I'll use examples. We don't call them, we'll use
That's
examples.
fine.
We deal with one family that the father is in prison and the mother is deceased. So there's a grandmother that is in her 70s, late 70s, almost 78, 79, that now has to raise 3 children, the last of which is 7 years old. she's on a small pension.
Yeah.
So obviously, with two teenagers and a young child, her expenses are literally quadrupled. And it's families like that that we have to support because her house, for instance, when COVID came, she didn't have Wi-Fi, so we had to assist with that. She couldn't afford to buy tablets for the children. And this is not one household that we're talking about. We're talking about numerous households across the length and breadth of Barbados. Because once a male or female is taken away from the family equation, chances are that the parent or the surviving, the other person, sorry, not surviving, the other person will suffer. I've had another scenario where a young man was charged with murder. His partner had two young children and she was pregnant with twins. She was living in a rented accommodation. She's from one of the Caribbean islands, but living here. So she doesn't have that
Support network.
family support
Yeah.
network. Right away, she's in trouble.
Yeah.
Because to leave those two children to go to work in her pregnant state is going to cost her more than anything else. Because childcare is very expensive, and then you got to still provide for the children. So that's the kind of effect that it has on families. Our parents that would have finished raising their children years ago have got to sometimes go back and start raising or support. In the young lady's case that I spoke about, it has to be organizations like Prison Fellowship and the churches that come in and help her. And I know the particularly young lady in question was being helped by the church. And they would say to her, because we as members of Prison Fellowship, when she did deliver the twins, we used to keep the children here so that she can go to work. The other two would have been, but we kept the twins here while she worked. Because it will cost her more than her salary for child care. So it's a kind of a domino effect. Because then when her partner left, her rent was gone into arrears. Water was cut non-existent. That was cut off. Light bill, and you see the point. You as a working person, you know that you can get an X amount every month, so you put that towards your light bill, your water bill, and you keep yourself
Afloat.
afloat. But if you miss two of those paychecks, well, you might be rich, I don't know.
No,
But chances are you're going to be in trouble. So imagine somebody being sentenced to 5 years in prison. That's 60 months of paycheck that family is going to miss. See the problem?
Yeah.
And our systems don't help the situation because nothing is geared towards helping the family. If we had a prison system where a man could go into prison where he can work, and the money that he works for maintains his family, that would help.
And it's not only the financial aspect,
No,
but obviously the family is robbed. The children are deprived of time with their parents.
There you go. It's emotional as well. And also it will affect the child's behavior. Because again, Barbados is a very small place. So everybody knows everybody. So when you go to school, children will start laughing at you. Hey, your father gone to prison. Your father, you understand me? And then you're rejected in school, you're rejected in your community because you become outcast because of what your father did. Nothing to do with your problems. So you find those children are more prone to have behavioral problems. They're more prone to need psychological help. And the list goes on. So it doesn't only affect the family, but then it becomes a problem of the economy. Because you gotta provide the help. Our welfare system, and I don't know anything about the welfare system, but I'm sure that is fully loaded with helping all of these people. So we've got to find innovative ways as Prison Fellowship to help families. I mean, we try to work with, we've got psychiatrists and psychologists on board, and we try to support where we can. But there's not a lot of people that will come and give their time and talents as a volunteer, which you can't be annoyed with them because they work, they need to be paid. But some people do give back some time, and we try to help some families, but we will miss some through the crack.
Do you think that the average person understands the implications when a man or woman is sentenced to prison?
No, I'm honestly, I don't think they do. Because unless it happens to you, then you don't know. Unless you're close to a situation, let's say it happens, in Barbados being such a small nation, everybody knows somebody that has somebody in prison. But they don't know the effect until you look and see, well, this is my niece or my nephew struggling because their father gone to prison and they're struggling.
And you spoke about Barbados being a close-knit society. We are very small, and there is that stigma. Is the stigma still as bad as it was, let's say, 20 years ago?
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it definitely is. Again, I like to give real examples.
Please.
Because I know what it is to the guys go through when they come out of prison. In the recent past, I had a farm. I'm trying to cut down on that now. But I used to employ guys that came from prison because obviously I knew them. And I remember it was about 2014, one guy came out and he stayed on my farm and worked on my farm. And I was coming through the gap and one of my neighbors stopped me. And she said to me, "Do you know that the guy you have working for you is an ex-inmate?" I said, "Yes, I know. That's why I hired him." And I don't think she was happy with my answer. But being a part of Prison Fellowship, I've seen it happen so many times. Guys come out, they get jobs, and then if they don't be upfront and tell the person that they've been to prison, in some cases when they're upfront and they say that, they don't get a job. When they hide it and somebody else says it to the person, then they end up losing the job in any case. So I always advise ex-inmates, when you go in for a job, let the person know upfront that you had a problem when you went to prison. In reality, if you go to prison, you've paid your debt to society. If you committed a crime and you were sentenced to 5 years and you served your 5 years, you've paid your debt to society. Society then needs to leave you alone to live and get on with the rest of your life. But it doesn't happen in Barbados. And that's part of the problem.
You're saying we are unforgiving people?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Because, again, we have tried, in some cases, to get families to take back their own. And once you go to prison, I don't want them in this house. Or in the case where the parents would have died, some of the remaining families say, "Well, he's not coming in here." You understand what I'm saying? But that's your family. Now, if your own family reject you, what chances do you have? And that's why we work as intermediary. We don't only work with the inmates, but we try to work with the family. And that's why programs like the Angel Tree Party will still bring families together. You understand? Children would get to know their father, and they won't be estranged. It's all about keeping the family ties. And Barbados has become so, I don't want to say commercialized or so, can't find the right word. But I would say that Barbados has become so progressive that we forget some of the values that our families taught us. And I was taught as a child that family is the most important thing. My grandmother used to say to us, you can choose your friend, but God chooses your family. So your family is there for life. But in Barbados, if you get in trouble, sometimes that's not what happens. And it's important that we try to change that mindset so that you can help your family. If a man fell down and he's trying to get up, don't push him down. pick him up.
Are you saying that that's not the type of mindset that is seen in other Caribbean islands?
Well, I don't know about. I declare my hand. I'm Guyanese. I'm from Guyana, and probably because Guyana is much bigger than Barbados, but you do your time, you come out and you try to live, and people would help you. Up to this day, they will still help. But I just think that it could be that people have had bad experiences. People might have had bad experiences, but my policy is that you don't close your mind because of one bad experience. If you fell down and you don't go back outside for the rest of your life, you're in trouble. So you got to forget about the bad experiences and give somebody a chance.
In terms of offering support to former inmates, I know that in 2021, the fellowship partnered with the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme. Is that partnership still going?
Yeah, with those youth entrepreneurship scheme is the one that gave us the tools
That you spoke about earlier.
that we spoke about earlier, that we give to guys to go out and work. Now, again, sometimes you got to reassure people that even though you say, well, you come from prison fellowship and somebody's going to come and cut your yard, people are not going to allow somebody to come and cut your yard unless they're supervised.
Yeah.
And you can't blame people. But at some point, you got to, think about change. I have known young men that came out of prison. As a matter of fact, one lived at my house when he came out of prison. He lived there for 2 years. He's now married. He's a deacon in his church. And he's got a wife and children. And he's never had a problem with the law or anything since. Sometimes somebody just needs a chance. Yes, some come and they go back to prison, but you won't have 100% success rate. But I know there are many that I could point you to that would have come out of prison and are living productive lives. One of them has been out more than 20-something years. He's an elder in his church. He's got a very good government job. And he contributes to society. Some of those same guys would come back. I know inmates that have farms that will bring cucumber and okras and things like this and say, look, this is for the soup kitchen. Well, we've got to give them a chance to become productive citizens.
But you do understand the fear that some
I
people would
understand. I totally understand the fear. But as a nation and as a people, I tell my kids this, you can't live in fear. You cannot live in fear. And at some point, it's getting to the stage now, at some point, the head count at DOD sometimes is 700 and 800 young men. That's a lot of men. And among those, not all of them are hardened criminals. There's some that could be rehabilitated. And that's all we're asking for, that they get a chance.
Speaking about rehabilitation, I know that the Prison Fellowship is a big supporter of justice reform. And we would have spoken off camera, and you said that sometimes some of the punishments, they don't fit the crimes.
I think in a small society like ours, locking somebody away for 5-6 years, especially a young person, is basically you throw in a damper on their entire life.
What did they do?
Well, let's say, for instance, one guy, well, they don't get 5 years of smoking marijuana now, but because of drug addictions, etc., they commit crimes. Why not have mandatory drug treatments places, and then they come out into a halfway house, and they're allowed to work. And yes, the money could go and look after the kids, but they're allowed to work. Prison Fellowship, for years now, we've been asking the government to let us have a building. There's so many derelict buildings around that we can run a halfway house, so that when a guy comes out and his family doesn't, while working with the family, he has somewhere to stay. He has to wait for his church to come and see him in a positive light, in a halfway house, not behind bars, but sitting, watching television, talking. Maybe, just maybe, they can patch that relationship together. Now, government has got so many derelict buildings, and we're asking, give us one. Let the very inmates that are in there come out and fix it, because they're working for themselves. And then, it happens in the bigger countries, you could be released to the halfway house so that you can start looking for a job, so that you can make sure that when you leave the prison, your ID, you've got your ID, you've got other things all in place to come back into society. Some guys leave prison, they've been there for 5 years, they give them a check, but they've got no ID to change the check. We've got to start looking at, yes, we do sentencing, and this is all about reforms as well. We sentence them, but when you sentence somebody, if he's got a 5-year sentence, at the end of the beginning of the last year, our role should be preparing that person to come out, making sure you take all of, you've got your ID, you've got somewhere to live, you've got these things. So you've done it way in advance. You don't wait until a month or so before he comes out to be writing to the welfare department and say, well, Neil Dowd is coming out of prison and he needs support. You know how the public service works. It's not a very fast system. So we've got to work with the system that we have and let the prepare these guys. Years ago, there was a committee that sat that looked at the help for the guys when they were coming out. I haven't heard anything more about that committee. And a committee like that is needed to assist these inmates so when they come out, they've got at least a fighting chance to survive. And that's restorative justice. You restore them back into society. You don't just say, well, I sentence you 5 years, when you come out, good luck. Now, there's a lot of work that we need to do in community service. Why not do community service? Why not look into having overseas where they would have ankle bracelets that allow them to stay in the house. All houses got Wi-Fi now.
Most.
You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They stay in the house and they don't come out until 8 in the morning when they go to work, and they come back home. And the ankle bracelet is fit with a GPS system, so you can't go out of the way. Now, you wouldn't have to feed that person because you got to work for himself. You would have to provide a security officer to sit with him at night and watch him sleep. You understand what I'm saying? It's the money that you save in those areas could do other things. But we just got to look at how. I'm not saying that if a guy commits murder or rape that you put him back on the street. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we've got to decide on, have a scale of what crimes and then what could be done with community service. Like if a guy goes up to prison for child support debt, he sits 6 weeks in prison and that debt is written off. But the child is suffering. No money is given to that because he goes and sits 6 months in prison. The state has to feed him, look out for him, and his child is still suffering. So we defeat the purpose. Why not get him to go and clean the side of the road and take the money and give it to the child? I really want to stress the need currently for a halfway house in Barbados. It's one of the most needed things, and it's so easy. I drive by so many buildings, and the halfway house should have an area where the guys could do farming, they could do poultry farming, they could do animal husbandry, and these are skills that they learn in prison. So they get a chance to come out and utilize the skill. Then you could teach them, while they're in the halfway house, you could teach them entrepreneurship skills so they could become their own bosses, they can do their own, manage their own businesses, etc. So you give them a fighting chance. Because the government is pushing entrepreneurship. Corporate Barbados would not hire them because they've got a prison record. And with that comes our police certificate of character that stops them from even going to do agriculture in Canada and those places. So I'm not saying that we should send people that will make Barbados disgrace Barbados, but we've got to look at these things. Our police certificate of character system makes a lot of these guys unemployable, and we've got to understand that if I committed a crime 10 years ago, it should be able to come off. Once I don't commit another crime in 10 years, we should be able to change that.
Expunge the record.
Yeah, expunge the record. It makes sense. Because every employer is asking you for police certificate of character. And the first thing you do is that you show them that I've got a police certificate. At the back of it says Neil Dowden went to prison in 1961 or something. Are we in 2023? Don't make sense.
And we hear a lot about recidivism in terms of the inmates that you do mentor, because it is so hard for them then once they leave prison to reintegrate, to get a job, as you just discussed. Do you see high rates of persons returning to the prison system?
I don't encounter such high rates because remember, we don't deal with every inmate. There's some guys that you will see them and they will come and then they disappear and they come again. But there's some that you can work with them and they're willing to work and not go back. Like I said, I could parade a list of guys in here that since they came out of prison have not had any problems with the law since. But it's just that these guys put their head down and they work. And they just keep quiet about their past and they move on. Because like I said, the less people that know, the better you are. But the problem with us is that, again, with we only get the news of the ones that commit crimes and go back. They're the ones that make the newspaper. They're the ones that make the headlines. So it looks as though it might be a big problem, but I'm speaking subject to correction. And if you speak to the prison, they will tell you that the recidivism rate has dropped in this country.
When you speak to young men especially, and try to get into their mind, know that they're in there, there's no cameras, there's no shaking to their family coming off the court steps, what concerns you?
I think my main concern is a lot of our young men are so hooked on drugs that sometimes, and I find this sometimes, you've got to give them time to get off of drugs, to have a proper conversation with them. That's the first thing. And a lot of our young men are hooked on this get-rich-quick system. I want to be a big rapper. I want to have all of this money because I want to wear a $300 shoe. You understand me? And because they don't have the means by which to be, the qualification or the means to get a job to provide that kind of living,
They would do anything for it.
So what we've got to do, to my mind, is to, I don't know, the values of our young people. This brand name culture and this I must look better than you culture, you know what I mean? And when you dress to go out, you can say, well, I've got $1,000 on me, shoe $300, pants this, shirt brand name, you know. That's the culture that we've got to change. All our young boys aspire, or not all, most of them aspire to this brand name culture. And it's even creeping into the church. So again, we've got to look at to change the mindset of our, and a lot of it is influenced by the North America and those areas where these rappers come out and they've got chains on their neck more than some people's mortgages and jewelry, you understand me? And our young people are seeing these things more readily on YouTube and all these things. So it's at them 24/7.
I'm listening to you, but you said something that struck me. You get referrals from the prison itself.
Yeah.
You are getting persons, inmates that exhibit the want to change. But what about those on the inside that need to have somebody to talk to, like Prison Fellowship?
There's a lot of prison volunteer organizations, not only Prison Fellowship, that go in and do counseling and speaking with these guys and do church ministry, etc. So there's no shortage of people going into the prison to help. And it's not something that only Prison Fellowship do. I'll be lying to you if I say only Prison Fellowship. There's a whole lot of people that go in there with the intentions to help these guys, because a lot of church-based organizations, etc. But sometimes it's up to the individual to accept the help when it's given to them, and that's important.
And in talking to these young men, and I keep saying young men because we're losing a lot of our young men to the system, do you find that they express remorse?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. A lot of young men will say, I've really hurt my mom. I've hurt, and that's one of the truths that you hear. A lot of young men are sorry because they would have caused disgrace to their mom or their family, and that's one of the top 10 problems you hear with them. And we got to try then to say to the family, you got to forgive him, try help him, so you don't go along that path. But a lot of guys crave forgiveness. And that's why I'm saying, because we've only got one prison, to lump everybody in there, people go in and then they might go in a nice quiet guy, and after 5 years they come out with plans to do this and do that and get rich quick schemes. Whereas if they had not gone in there in the first place and not been exposed to that environment, we wouldn't have had that problem.
You spoke about the need for more volunteers. You do have some, but you need some more.
One of the problems with Prison Fellowship is that a lot of the volunteers look like me, gray beard, old. We're trying very hard, and that's why the give back scheme is important to us, because a lot of young graduates and university students are exposed to what Prison Fellowship do. And what we find is that they come back and they try to help as well. I am trying to get more younger volunteers, so that, because young people have their own language,
Yes, they do.
and I might, they would look at me and say, well, you're old, you're ready to, no, you're old, you become a Christian, but you did things when you were young, which is true. So if a young person could say to them, well, this is not the way, I'm young like you, but I'm trying to live on the straight and narrow, is a message that we better received. And we're trying as well to take in some of the inmates that would have been living right, to go back and speak to the guys and say, hey, I've been here, but I've come out now and I'm trying to be a better citizen, and it's working. What we want to do is take back some of the success stories in the prison, as well as get younger people to go in and speak to these guys and say, that speak their language.
Tell me about your future plans for Prison Fellowship.
Future plans, halfway house, halfway house, halfway house. That's the most important thing. I would love for Prison Fellowship to have more say in, because we do a lot of work with ex-inmates, etc. But I know that we could do even more by working with the prison. And in terms of I see Prison Fellowship be represented on the prison board, etc., so that we can give our input into what's going on. I mean, it's good to have a board with people that are all psychologists, but you need somebody with their ear to the ground that can help. And that's something that I want to see, a very vibrant aftercare committee set up, so that we can help these guys and women before they come out. Because we talk about guys, but there are women in prison as well. And a very vibrant halfway house that is supported by corporate Barbados, and also having more systems in place to help the children of inmates.
Mr. Doden, thank you for taking the time out. We've heard that you're the chief cook and bottle washer here as well to talk to us this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. That was Mr. Neil Dowden, the Executive Director of Prison Fellowship Barbados. I'm Lisa Lord. You are watching One on One. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.